Okay, welcome back from your lunch break. Nice to see you guys back. Hopefully you've had some chance to refresh and have some food, or maybe spend the morning doing whatever you'd like to do and come join us for the afternoon. We're going to start with loving kindness meditation. I usually do this in the morning, because it really helps your mind to fill up that gas tank and go out into the world and be loving and kind. But since we had a lot of new people here this morning, I didn't do loving kindness meditation, but I'm going to do it this afternoon with you guys so you guys get a chance to practice it. Remember, we're going to do the chanting, then we're going to do the breathing mindfulness meditation, then we're going to go into the loving kindness, and then we're going to come back to the breathing mindfulness and then come out with the chanting. And this is to help you transform your mind away from that anger, hatred, ill will, all those lesser versions, even that negative self-talk that the mind tends to have. And then afterwards, that's where I'm going to discuss this topic of practicing non-attachment, how to eliminate attachment to those who are closest to us. So if you'd like to join for meditation, I'm going to get that started with some chanting, and then I'll come back in with the guidance. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakava Bhutang Mahakavanhang Apivateyami Savakato Mahakavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Mahakavato Savaka Sangho Sanghang Namami Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso mahakava Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vicacaranang Sammuno Sakhato Rokavitu Anutero Purisa Dhamma Sati Satatava Manusang Bhuto Bhagavati. Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, and the upper body erect, just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath, a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then when you're ready, exhale out through the nose, breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathing gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you observe that the mind moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. Then I'll be back with more guidance on loving kindness meditation. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. Continuing to breathe in through the nose and out through the nose. Repeat these affirmations in the mind on the out breath. May I be peaceful. May I be safe. May I be well. May I be free of all discontentedness and the suffering that it causes. May Mom and Dad be peaceful. May they be safe. May they be well. May they be free of all discontentedness in the suffering that it causes. May my family, friends, neighbors, and co-workers all be peaceful. May they be safe. May they be well. May they be free of all discontentedness in the suffering that it causes. May all those who have harmed me be peaceful. May they be safe. May they be well. May they be free of all discontentedness in the suffering that it causes. May all those who I have harmed be peaceful. May they be safe. May they be well. May they be free of all discontentedness in the suffering that it causes. May all beings, wherever they reside, be peaceful. May they be safe. May they be well. May they be free of all discontentedness in the suffering that it causes. Now return back to breathing mindfulness meditation, focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. Breathing in and out. อะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธมะคะวะโหตังมหาคะวันหังอภิวาเทมิสวากขาโตมหาคะวัตตาธัมโมธัมมังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนมหาคะวะโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมะภะคะวะอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารณังสัมมุโนสกขาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาธัมมาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสนังพุทโธภะคะวะติ Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. Okay, so this morning we talked about true love, love without attachment. We talked about how that's loving individuals as they are, not wanting or expecting anything from them, not trying to force them or control them to be any certain way, just loving them as they are, separating the person from the choices and decisions that they make, understanding that we're not going to agree with all the choices and decisions that an individual makes. That's normal. That's just impermanence, right? So if we can only love people who we agree with, then we can only love ourselves. And as I mentioned, sometimes that's hard to do for you as well, perhaps. But what you would like to do is get to the point where you don't have any attachment to anybody or anything. That's where the mind's going to be liberated and free. As long as the mind's holding on and craving this permanence, wanting things to be a certain way, wanting other people to be a certain way, trying to have expectations and controlling other people, you're not going to be able to have harmonious relationships. You're not going to be able to practice true love. Oftentimes we have true love in our mind, but it's polluted with these cravings, desires, attachments. Oftentimes people around you, like your parents or your siblings or other people, they have true love in their mind towards you, but they have these cravings, these desires, these expectations of things that they want from you, and those are polluting their true love. And the true love can't be felt. So as you're spending time around people who are close to you, you can't feel their true love, perhaps. What you're noticing is maybe their cravings, desires, attachments, their expectations. But when we get those cravings, desires, attachments out of the way, our true love can shine through, and we can have very sustaining, very fulfilling, very satisfying relationships. all your relationships can be fulfilling and satisfying and sustaining, where you don't have to go through broken relationship after broken relationship after broken relationship. That comes from learning what is non-attachment and practicing non-attachment in relationships. Non-attachment isn't that you're distant from somebody or that you don't spend time with somebody or anything like that. It's that you learn how to enjoy to spend time with each other, but you're not basing your inner feelings on that other person. Oftentimes we think that that's good. Some people even call this empathy, where you understand someone's feelings and you share in their feelings. But if you're sharing in somebody's feelings, that's like they're in the quicksand and you jump down into the quicksand with them. This isn't what's going to lead to beneficial results in your life. Another way that people teach empathy is to understand people's feelings. You can understand people's feelings without sharing in their feelings. And that's the type of empathy that you would like to practice, is where you understand people's feelings. But you don't have to feel angry just because mom's angry. You don't have to feel sad just because sister or brother is sad. You can maintain your peace and maintain your joy. This is like standing on stable ground. Brother and sister in the quicksand, you stand on stable ground. And now, if they would like your help, you can actually help them because your mind's stable and steady and content and peaceful and joyful. And you'll be able to accomplish this by eliminating your attachment and practicing non-attachment in these relationships. So the people that you're closest to, those are probably the relationships that you have the most challenges with. The life partners, the children, brothers, sisters, parents, people like this, people that you're really close to. Those are where you have the most troubles, perhaps. But when you get rid of these cravings, desires, attachments, you'll be able to have sustaining and fulfilling relationships with all these people. And it just comes through work, and it comes through training your mind. You're going to need to practice the Eightfold Path. What I taught you on Monday, you're going to need to practice that in order to get rid of your attachment about anything, whether it's to a person or to a material object or any other types of things. Remember, the attachment is the longing and the yearning. It's not the object itself. So, for example, if I had a liter of water and I was on my way to a hiking trail and I parked at the hiking trail and I had this liter of water in my car and I got out and I was walking down the hiking trail, I could be 30, 45 minutes down the hiking trail and I could be like, oh my goodness, I forgot my water. My water. And now I run back to my car, twisting my ankle, slinging open the door to the car. Water. In this situation, I'm attached to the water, right? But I could also be 30 or 45 minutes down the hiking trail and be like, I forgot my water. Man, I'm going to be out here for like 6 straight hours. I should probably turn around and go get my water. And now I'd make my way back to the car calmly, and I open the door and I get my water, and then I go on about my day and have my hike, right? The object is the same in both of these situations. The only difference is the first person had a longing, yearning, and craving. Their mind was craving for this water to be permanent, and it shook up their mind when they realized that they didn't have the water. The second person, they also realized they didn't have the water, but they understood that this water is impermanent, and now they just gradually made their way back to the car and they got their water. So it's not the fact that you have a relationship that it's an attachment. It's the way the mind relates to this. It's not the object. It's not whether you have a mobile phone or not that determines whether you have an attachment or not. It's the way that the mind longs and yearns and craves for it and wants it to be permanent. So you can have plenty of relationships and actually not have attachment in these relationships. Sometimes people think that because the Buddha left his family for 6 years and he went and got to enlightenment, that that's what you need to do in order to get to enlightenment. But that's what he did temporarily, just to train his mind to let go and not hold on. Oftentimes when you're working to eliminate an attachment, you need to distance yourself from it for a period of time to train your mind to let it go. And then as your mind has let it go, then there's no harm in being back together in a relationship. So after being away for 6 years, the Buddha came back around his family. His son ordained with him, his wife ordained with him, his stepmother, his cousins and brother-in-laws and people like this. He was around his family. So he had relationships. He just wasn't attached. And of course, he loved these people. He had a genuine interest in seeing them be well. He just wasn't attached to them. So that when people were dying or when people were having difficulties, his mind wasn't upset. Sometimes, again, we think that it's a matter of our care and our love for somebody, that when we see them struggling or having difficulties, we have painful feelings in the unenlightened state when our mom or our brother is struggling. But that's not your love that's doing that. That's your craving, desire, attachment, your longing, your yearning. This morning I said something. I said you can't love anything other than a living being. So you can't love chocolate. You can't love your car, right? Sometimes people say, I love chocolate. Well, if you understand what love is, it's a genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. You can't love a piece of chocolate. You can crave for a piece of chocolate. You can really enjoy chocolate. You can really like the taste of chocolate, but you don't actually love it because it's not an actual living being. You can't love something that's not a living being. So oftentimes this is one of the challenges with that understanding what true love is because we use the word love in replace of a craving, desire, attachment. They might say, I love chocolate, or I loved that movie. No, your mind was like longing, yearning to be able to see that movie. You might have liked the movie. You might have enjoyed the movie, but you didn't love it because it's a genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. So now that we're moving into this topic about talking about practicing non-attachment, how to eliminate attachment to those that are closest to us, I'm going to teach you how to have relationships with people and enjoy those relationships, but not be attached. Meaning, don't form your inner feelings based on what's going on with that person. And it's not because you don't love them. Of course you love them. It's just that your mind's been trained not to form inner feelings on what's going on with this person. You can get to the point where people around you that you deeply love can die and you won't be sorrowful. You won't grieve. Not because you don't love them. It's just because you're not attached to them. You understand that they are impermanent. If it's your mother, your life partner, or people like this that are dying, you don't have to grieve, right? That's something that the mind does when it has attachment. And these people are going to die, or you're going to die. And if your mind's attached, it's going to be very painful when they're dying or when you're dying. So you can get to a point where you eliminate all of that. And now you can get to a point where you can have gratitude. You can have appreciation when people are dying. You can just appreciate the time that you spent with them and thank goodness they were in your life. So it's learning how to eliminate attachment to those who are closest to you that's going to allow you to be able to do that. So the first thing that you need to be able to do is you need to acquire wisdom. This is true about every aspect of the path to enlightenment. In order to get rid of an attachment and eliminate an attachment, you need to understand how to do it. And that comes through first practicing the Eightfold Path. You're going to need to know that inside and out, backwards and forwards. So what I taught you guys on Monday, you're going to need to spend several weeks and maybe even months committing that to memory. And sometimes what students like to do is they like to sit down with me either online through Zoom or in person, and they like to almost like they're teaching it to me in order to confirm that they're understanding the Eightfold Path. So if you learn the Eightfold Path, you should be able to know things like right intention. You should just be able to know the three things: the intention of renunciation, non-ill will, and harmlessness. And you should know what those things are and how to practice them. When it comes to right speech, eliminating lying, slander, harsh speech, and frivolous speech, you just automatically know what those things are and how to practice it. The 5 factors of well-spoken speech: speaking at the proper time, what you say is true, gentle, beneficial, with a mind of loving kindness. You're going to need to put some time and effort into committing that to memory so that you can actually practice it in day-to-day life. So you're going to need to cultivate this wisdom, focusing on developing your deep understanding and your practice of these teachings. When we are talking about the 3 poisons or the 3 unwholesome roots, and we're talking about that pollution of the unknowing of true reality or ignorance, how the mind just doesn't understand what it doesn't understand. And I explained to you guys how wisdom is what eradicates that. Well, when we talk about cultivation of wisdom, it's not just intellectual understanding. In order to get to enlightenment, you do need to have a certain intellectual understanding of these teachings. And that's what you start with in a class like this, a course like this, reading books and coming to classes. You start with your intellectual learning. Then you go into reflection to independently verify whether it's true or false, but then you're practicing the teachings. That's where the ignorance or the unknowing of true reality really gets eliminated, because you can know something intellectually, but then you can do something just the opposite. A good example of that is as we were growing up, Intellectually, we probably knew that drugs and alcohol were unwise for us to use, drugs and alcohol. But because of our ignorance and our unknowing of true reality, we might have still indulged in those kinds of things. That's because of our unknowing of true reality. So the cultivation of wisdom, it starts with intellectual learning, but it's about your practice. It's about the type of decisions that you're making on a day-to-day basis. So to cultivate wisdom is, yes, to do the intellectual learning, but then to make the wise decisions and actually practice the teachings. And that's where the wisdom is fully cultivated and where the ignorance is actually eradicated. This is how Thai people know whether somebody's actually enlightened or not. You can see through the way that their mind functions and the way that they make decisions. You can tell whether someone's enlightened or not. So you would like to practice the teachings. Then, in order to eliminate attachment to those who are closest to you, you're going to need to practice true love. That starts with understanding what it is. So that's why I taught it this morning. You're going to need to have a deep understanding of what is true love and be able to practice that. Eliminating any expectations that you might have for others and accepting and being comfortable with their unique decisions. Love is not attachment. Love is a genuine interest in seeing them be well. So missing a person, this isn't your love. Or grief, that's not your love. That's because of the attachment from the craving, desire, attachment. Like I mentioned, you can get to the point where your mom could die and you wouldn't grieve, not because you don't love her, but because you just understand she's not permanent and your mind's not holding on, wanting her to be permanent. You can have a life partner or children. They can go away from you and you don't miss them because you enjoy the time that you spend with them, but you enjoy when you're away from them too. If you can only enjoy your time when you're with these people, that means your mind's attached. So you would like to get to the point where that's not the case. So understanding true love and practicing that is going to help you to do that. You're going to need to have freedom of decisions where you understand that each individual being is their own unique individual and they need freedom to make their own decisions, and so do you. One of the things that I used to do before I understood this is I used to go to my wife, for example, and I would say, hey, honey, there's this new movie that's in the movie theater. I would like you to go with me to the movies. Do you want to go see this movie? And she was like, no, I don't want to see the movie. I'm like, come on, you party pooper. Like, come on, come with me. You got to go to the movies. Let's go. She's like, no, I don't want to go. It's like, come on. You got to go to the movie, right? I'm trying to put my expectations on her. I'm trying to force her and control her because I can't have fun unless she goes with me. My mind's attached to her, wanting and longing, yearning for her to come to the movies. Well, every once in a while, she would kind of relent and she would like come to the movies with me, but she'd be grumpy the whole time because she didn't want to be there. And then I'd be irritated because she's grumpy and she's not having a good time. So neither one of us are having a good time at this movie, right? But then slowly but surely you learn about these teachings, how to have love without attachment and how to not be attached to people. So now I go to her and I say, hey, I call her Madja now, which is mommy. Hey, mommy, your son and I would like to take you on a date and take you out to a movie. Would you like to go to the movies? And she's like, no, not interested. I'm going to stay home. Okay, have a good time. We'll see you later. We're going to go to the movies, right? So just accepting whatever decision she makes. That's what you've got to get to, where you understand that everybody is their own independent decision maker and give them the freedom to make their own decisions. If someone isn't making a decision the way you want them to make it and you're attached, you're going to try to pressure them into making decisions your way. So to have this non-attachment where you're in relationships without attachment, you need to be comfortable with whatever decision people make. You ask them a question, they make a decision, you just accept it. That's their decision. Good, bad, indifferent, whatever, that's their decision. And you just need to accept it. So you're going to need to ensure that you're not forcing your way of doing things on other people. This will help you to have non-attachment. You'll need to learn how to ask and invite people rather than pressuring or forcing them, and then being comfortable with whatever decision that they're making. The example that I just gave you with my wife is a good example of that. Ask and invite, and then they're either going to say yes or no, and you just accept whatever decision that they make, right? Whereas if you're attached, you're going to be trying to pressure and pressure and pressure. So you can ask and invite people to various things and then just accept whatever decision that they make. Oops. As part of practicing non-attachment, you're going to need to allow people to struggle in certain situations. This is going to be really challenging for you because you're going to see people struggling. You're going to see people having difficulties in life, and you're going to want to rush in there and fix whatever is going on because your attachment to them, you're going to be uncomfortable with seeing them struggle, and you're going to think that you have the right answer and you want to jump in there and fix everything. So you're going to need to learn how to step back, and that sometimes people need to struggle, and that's okay. And that's one of the ways that they're going to cultivate wisdom. I gave you guys the example this morning about my son with the friends, that he had these friends that we knew that he was going to have difficulties with, and we just had to step back and let him struggle. And through that, he cultivated wisdom, and now he can make wonderful decisions about friends. And now he's out there making all kinds of decisions about friends. So you're going to need to understand that it's their life, it's their decisions, and it's their results. And allowing that struggle doesn't mean you don't love them, doesn't mean you don't care about them. In fact, it's just the opposite. You care so much about them that you realize rushing in there and solving all their problems doesn't allow them to cultivate wisdom. And by you stepping back, it allows them to cultivate wisdom so that whether you're with them or you're away from them, they can make wise decisions. But if you don't allow that struggle, then they never cultivate the wisdom. And someday when you're away from them, they're going to be struggling and you're not around to help them. So sometimes you're going to need to allow that struggle. You can offer advice, but they may or may not welcome that advice. So you're going to need to be comfortable where if they accept your advice or they don't accept your advice, you're going to need to be comfortable with that. Sometimes we're taught that when we get married, that we are now one person and that we're going to agree on everything, and we have to agree on everything. Sometimes people talk about it that way. They're like, now that we're married, we are one person. We function the same. I can assure you, you're never going to agree with your life partner on everything that they do. You shouldn't even try because it's just not going to happen. You guys are going to disagree, but disagree doesn't mean disrespect. Sometimes people think that if you disagree, it's disrespectful, but that's not true. That's just impermanence. That's all that is. Of course we have a disagreement because you've had one set of life experiences and I've had another set of life experiences, and we're going to approach this challenge in different ways. My wife grew up in remote Thailand, right? And I grew up in the USA. We're going to have different opinions and different views of how to solve any particular challenge. And it doesn't mean my way's right and her way's wrong, or her way's right and my way's wrong. It's just different, right? So when you get married, you're going to have disagreements, and it's okay. You can sit down, you can talk, and at the end of your discussion, you might still disagree. And when you're having a discussion about disagreements, you shouldn't be trying to convince the other person that they should think in the same way as you. When you're trying to convince somebody of something, that's your craving, desire, attachment. Instead, if this person's interested in your opinion and your views, you're sharing that with them, and it's up to them whether or not they change their views or opinions or not, right? You're just sharing your perspective on this, and perhaps you might even change your views and opinions. So if you sit down in a discussion where you guys are disagreeing and your goal is to convince them that you're right and they're wrong, this is coming from your craving and this is coming from your ego. You wouldn't be interested in that. You're not going to have a healthy discussion in this situation. You would like to sit down and just share your views and opinions. And if they change their mind, then that's up to them. And you're just sharing your views and opinions. So disagreement doesn't mean that you have to hate them. It doesn't mean that there needs to be division. It doesn't mean that there needs to be disrespect. Sometimes when there's disagreement in a relationship, it's like a fight to death to see who's right. Right? And to see who's going to win. And we fight until death. It's like two animals fighting to death, right? That's not the way it has to be. It can be sit down and talk and discuss. And that's why the Eightfold Path is so important, because if you don't understand the 5 factors of well-spoken speech, like speaking at the proper time, if your mind's angry and frustrated because this person's disagreeing with you, that's because of your craving, desire, attachment that's causing that frustration. It's not the proper time for you to speak. So you need to speak when your mind's calm and peaceful. If you're angry and frustrated, it's not the time to talk about a disagreement. Let your mind calm down, let their mind calm down, and then come back and talk later when you guys are both clear-minded. It's helpful to have discussions versus forced agreement, because that's what we'll tend to do in relationships, is we'll try to get the other person to agree with us through force. You need to be able to have just discussions where you're not trying to convince them of anything whatsoever. You're just having a discussion and sharing your views. In order to eliminate attachment to the people closest to you, you're going to need to feel comfortable with having time alone. This is something that sometimes we don't have in our own mind, that we don't have that ability to enjoy our time alone. One of the ways that you can do this is go on holiday alone, go to dinner alone, go to the mall alone, spend time alone, go to the park alone, go do different things alone, go get a massage alone, things like this. Whereas if you're always doing things with other people, your mind hasn't really been comfortable to do things alone. So you're going to need to learn how to do things alone. If you're not comfortable doing things alone now, then you can do things alone and gradually learn to do that. If you don't enjoy spending time with yourself alone, why would anyone ever enjoy spending time with you? Think about that, right? If you don't enjoy spending time alone, why would anyone ever enjoy spending time with you if you don't even enjoy spending time with yourself? So you're going to need to learn how to spend time alone. Take yourself out on a date. Go to a nice restaurant. Spend some money on yourself, right? You might do that with a friend where you go to a really nice fancy restaurant and spend a lot of money. Do that alone sometimes. You're worth it, right? Go out there and enjoy yourself. So learn how to spend time alone, whether it's shopping or dinners or holidays, all those kinds of things. Learning to be comfortable in silence is really helpful. When you're communicating with people, it's important to communicate with a purpose. Sometimes when there's attachment, like in a life partnership, say one of you guys go on a holiday or one of you guys go on a business trip, you might call, honey, what are you doing? What are you doing now? Oh, I miss you. What about this? What about that? You're not really talking about a real purpose. It's just talking about attachment. Oh, I love you so much. I miss you. What are you doing? I can't wait to get back home. Oh, I've been missing you ever since I left the airport. Oh, I feel so miserable without you. This is just talking about your attachment and the symptoms of your attachment. You're not communicating with a purpose. So if you're going to be away from people in order to spend time alone and you would like to train your mind, be sure you're not calling back to them or communicating with them in ways like this where you're just reinforcing the attachment. So you're going to need to communicate with a purpose rather than, I miss you. I want you to do this. Where are you? All these kinds of things. Your breathing mindfulness meditation and generosity, that's that gradual, general, ongoing training that you're going to need to do at all times. This is throughout your days, frequently doing meditation and practicing generosity. That's going to train your mind to let go. That's going to help you get rid of all cravings, desires, attachments, including to people. So you're going to need to have a well-developed practice of generosity and breathing mindfulness meditation. With both of these, frequency is more important than duration. So if you have the option of one meditation for 30 minutes or two for 15, you would like to do the 2 for 15. That's going to be more impactful to your mind than the one meditation for 30 minutes. And the same thing is true about generosity. If it was a matter of donating $500 a year to an orphanage or $1 a day, the $1 a day is going to actually be more helpful for your mind because you're having to let go more frequently of this money and you're having to constantly let go. So breathing mindfulness meditation and generosity are two ongoing trainings that you would like to be doing daily in order to train your mind to let go. You can walk in life together and in these teachings. Where possible, if an entire household can be learning and practicing these teachings, this is actually going to be really helpful for you. It's not always possible for that to occur, but if that's the case, you guys can support and encourage each other because you'll spot each other's attachments. You'll see each other doing things that are unwise, and you can support and encourage each other in a loving and kind way. But if you're in a household where people are not all practicing the teachings, it can be somewhat of a struggle. Like I gave you the example earlier, if your life partner goes on a trip and they call you back and say, honey, did you miss me, or are you missing me? And you're like, no, I'm not missing you at all. This can be somewhat of a challenge. So in terms of getting rid of attachment and eliminating attachment in your relationships, it's helpful with you practicing the teachings, but if someone else is practicing too, then they're also going to be practicing non-attachment. And that can really help you and them get to non-attachment in their relationships. Sometimes when we're in relationships like with a life partner, we tend to sleep together in the same bed, which there's no harm sleeping in the same bed together. But what you would like to do is introduce the ability to sometimes sleep on your own. Sometimes we only sleep by ourselves when there's a problem in the relationship. Someone's in the doghouse, right? There's been some problem, there's been some argument, and now we don't want to sleep with each other. There's aversion. But you would like to be able to do this even when things are going good, that sometimes you guys sleep separately. Because if you get used to sleeping with each other all the time, for those of you guys that have had that experience, you know when your partner's gone, it's hard to sleep. This is because your mind is attached in those situations. So when you guys are spending time together, sometimes sleep together, but sometimes sleep separately. What you're doing is you're training the mind to be comfortable with impermanence so that it doesn't crave permanence and it doesn't keep holding on. So sometimes sleep together, enjoy that. Sometimes sleep apart. Train your mind to go back and forth like this, and that's okay. That's not a sign of whether you guys are getting along or whether you love each other, of whether you sleep together. Because me and my wife, we haven't slept in the same bed for, I don't know, maybe 7, 8 years now. We love each other deeply, right? But we don't sleep in the same bed anymore for multiple reasons, but we don't sleep in the same bed anymore. So sleeping in the same bed doesn't necessarily mean that you love each other, but sleeping apart doesn't actually mean that you hate each other either. So you just would like to introduce some impermanence so the mind gets comfortable whether you're sleeping together or you're not sleeping together. And then when someone goes on a trip or something like that, no big deal. Your mind's already comfortable sleeping alone. You can easily sleep alone. Some other things to think about is that no attachment actually cultivates closeness. Sometimes we're taught that, I don't know if you guys have this in your culture. In the culture I grew up in, people usually say like a family that eats together stays together. Right? This is actually attachment. The idea that you live in a family unit of 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 people, and everybody has to eat at exactly the same time, exactly the same, each day has to eat exactly the same time. This is impractical. It's not going to happen like this. Not everybody's going to be hungry at the same time. This is why family dinners can sometimes erupt into arguments, because people don't want to be there. But there's this artificial time, 5 o'clock every day we all have to eat, or 6 o'clock every day we all have to eat. Now we have to force ourselves to go downstairs and be with everybody else when we really aren't interested in being there. So understand that you don't have to eat together and force each other to be together in order to be able to have great relationships with each other. For our family, we have a table that's just like an eating table, and then we have a sofa that's around it. It's like an L-shaped sofa, and very rarely does our family actually eat together. I would say once or twice a month that we eat together, but we're very close. It's just that everybody's on a different schedule. My wife goes to work and does her thing. My son goes to school and does his thing. I do my thing, and we very rarely eat all together. We don't have to eat together in order to be family and love each other. But we have this sofa around our table so that sometimes when my son is eating at the table, I might come over there on the sofa and kind of hang out with him while he's eating at the table. So you don't have to all eat at the same time. You don't have to force yourself to do these kinds of things. It's okay if people eat at different times, because then everybody's getting what they need. My wife eats quite early. She doesn't eat anything after like 3 p.m. or 4 p.m. If she's eating at 4 p.m., that's like really late for her to eat, right? That's her body, and that's what she chooses. But none of us really eat that way, my son or I. So if we all force ourselves to do the same things, that's the craving for permanence. And now we're uncomfortable in those situations. But if everybody gets to do whatever they feel comfortable with, now everybody feels whole. Everybody feels great. We're not being forced to do things any particular way. Discontentedness in a relationship, if your mind's discontent, it means there's attachment. So if you think through the people that you have discontentedness with, that you get angry and frustrated and agitated right now, maybe your parents, your siblings, your life partner, your children, that means you're attached to them. You should use that as an indication. Like I was teaching yesterday, the red light on the dashboard of your car, you can know that you have attachment in those relationships. You're not a bad person. You haven't done anything wrong. You don't have to feel guilty or shameful that this attachment is there, but just know you're attached to your mom or you're attached to your dad because you get angry and you get frustrated in those relationships, or your brothers or your sisters or your life partner or your children. So when you're having discontentedness, that means that there's attachment in the relationship. And when there's no attachment, that means that there's no discontentedness in the relationship. So when you're experiencing the point where you've gone 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, and you don't have any discontentedness in this relationship whatsoever, you know that your mind's not attached and you can just have a wonderful, fulfilling relationship. Me and my wife haven't argued for probably like 5 or 6 years. We've had disagreements where we've disagreed with each other and we sit down and we talk about it. Where in the past we would yell and holler and scream and fight to death. Now we sit down and we talk, and sometimes we get at the end of the discussion and we agree with each other. Sometimes we still don't agree with each other at the end of the discussion, but we find a way to do it whichever way we both feel comfortable with. So if you're having arguments, if you're getting angry and frustrated or any of these other discontent feelings, it just means there's attachment in your relationship. You probably have love in there. And if you get this attachment out of the way, your love can shine through more and more. I know now more than ever how much my wife actually loves me, where before I had a hard time seeing that, because in the past I had a lot of money, I was pretty wealthy, and I would be giving her money all the time, right? I was giving her money, and in the back of my mind I was thinking maybe she's just with me because of the money, right? Or maybe in the past we were having sex and maybe she thought, he's with me just because of the sex. Or in the past she was doing my laundry and cooking for me and things like this, and maybe she thought, he's just with me because of that stuff. But now we have this life where she lives her own independent life. She has her own money. She takes care of all those things herself. I know that she's only with me because she cares about me and she's interested in being with me. She doesn't want anything from me. She doesn't expect anything from me. She can live her life completely independent of me. And this way I know she's truly with me because she just loves me, because she doesn't have any wants or expectations. And the same thing for me. Like, she knows that he's with me because he just loves me and he enjoys being with me and he would like to see me be well. Where before, when we have all this attachment, you can't quite tell whether this person truly loves you or not because they always want and expect something from you. So if there's discontentedness in the relationship, there is attachment. It's helpful to focus on quality of time versus quantity of time. Sometimes we prioritize the quantity of time with someone and we think that that means that we're close because we spend a lot of time with each other. Well, you would like to spend quality time. Again, back to my relationship with my wife, we don't spend hardly any time with each other anymore because we're off doing different things. We've been together 18 years now, right? We've been there, done that. We've spent all that time together. We've had all those conversations, right? We don't need to spend every waking moment with each other to know that we love each other. She's out there doing wonderful things. I'm out there doing things. And then we see each other in the evenings or on the weekends or in the mornings. And when we see each other, it's always pleasant words. It's always being polite, kind, friendly, and respectful to each other. So when we're spending time with each other, it's quality time rather than quantity of time. So you might notice that your relationship kind of transitions over time. So you don't have to prioritize the quantity of time to know that you're having a close relationship with someone. You're going to need to have patience as you're working on eliminating attachments, because these attachments gets eliminated gradually over time. My wife probably took a good minimum of 5 years of concerted effort to eliminate her attachment to her son. There were things that she was doing before that to help her eliminate her attachment, but when she was actively working on eliminating her attachment to her son, it took her a good 5 years to be able to do that. So it's going to take time to get rid of these attachments. It's not going to be quick. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be gradual training. And in this situation, my wife even had me helping her out because I was doing things with my son and with her to be able to help them to get rid of their attachment. So you're going to need help as you're going along to be able to learn and grow and develop and to be able to eliminate these attachments. And you're going to need to have patience, because as you're eliminating attachment, you can get really angry, you can get really frustrated because you know what you're working towards, but your mind just isn't there yet. And you have to have patience as you're making your way on this journey. And then lastly, the very last thing, this is like the ultimate thing to be able to help you to eliminate your cravings, desires, attachments in your relationships. I refer to it as reflection on death. In the teachings of the Buddha, you'll see him oftentimes refer to this as contemplation of death. This is one of the things that you can do that's really going to help you overcome your attachment to the people that you're closest to. So if you've got your Eightfold Path really well underway, which includes the breathing mindfulness meditation and generosity and all those other things on the Eightfold Path, eventually what you would like to be able to get to is the point where you might decide to do reflection on death. What this is it's a technique where you actually introduced into the mind the thought or the idea that this person has actually died, even though they haven't, because that's the biggest amount of impermanence that you could experience in a relationship. And oftentimes that's where the mind's shocked the most, and that's where it grieves and has sorrow and despair and misery in those situations. And this is going to happen. Every single person in your life is going to leave at some point, and you're going to die too. So it's going to happen. So you can either wait for it to sneak up on you and catch you by surprise, or you can go visit it. It's like you see death waiting in the corner, and you know death is going to come visit you someday. And you can either wait for death to come sneak up on you, or you can go visit it. What this is where you sit quietly and you close your eyes and you envision that mom has died, for example, or brother or sister or your children or your life partner. You play it out in your mind. You're not aspiring for them to die. You're not wanting them to die. You're not hoping that they will die. You're just playing it out in your mind as if they have died, almost convincing your mind that they've died. You might think about like a police officer coming to the house and telling you that your loved one has passed away, or maybe you get a call from a doctor or a government official or something like this, or maybe a family member has called you, and now you play that out in your mind. You're not planning it so that when it happens, this is what you are going to do. You just kind of walk yourself through it as if it's actually occurred, and you live it out within your own mind. And you might do this for 10, 15, 20 minutes. And as you're doing it, you might actually grieve. You might actually feel sorrowful. You might actually start crying during this process. And if that's the case, that's your craving being triggered. That's your attachment being triggered. But when you're done with it, you'll regain your composure. And that's why you like to have the breathing mindfulness meditation underway, so you can regain your composure. And now over a few days, you'll regain your composure. And now maybe 2 weeks or a month later, do it again. And now regain your composure and do it again and do it again. And keep doing it until you can do it 2 or 3 times and your mind doesn't have any strong emotions, that you just understand, yep, mom's going to die. Yep, you're very comfortable with that. And you understand that that's going to happen. Because when you play this out in your mind, not only are you interested in playing it out like, okay, there's the informing of the death, maybe there's a viewing or a funeral, maybe there's a burial or a cremation, but also play the rest of it out too. What are you going to do after that? Again, you're not planning it, but just look at it as there's life after death. This is normal, that mom has died, but we're still going to live life afterwards. Or brother or sister, a life partner has died, and we still have this life afterwards. Because oftentimes when we think about people dying, we're like, I can't imagine living without them, because the mind's holding on, right? So you've got to imagine that. You need to imagine living without them so you can see that that's okay. And that's normal, that there is life after this person. Because when someone dies and it sneaks up on you, it can feel like someone chopped you off at the knees or pulled the carpet out from under your feet. But it doesn't have to be that way. You can confront death and then you'll be comfortable with it. I did this in my early 20s with my grandmother and my mom, because those were the people that I was attached to the most. And after I did this, I was grieving, I was sorrowful, but I started thinking about, if they had really died, there were certain things that I wish I would have said to them that I never said to them. And there were certain questions that I was interested in asking them that I would never had the opportunity to ask them if they actually died. So after I regained my composure, I called them up and I was like, Grandma, I've always been meaning to ask you this question, right? And I asked her like 2, 3, 4, 5 questions. And it was beautiful, because if she had really died, I wouldn't have been able to do that, right? So I did that and it felt great. It was like, wow, I got this information that I was interested in having. And then I was like, I've always been meaning to tell you this, Grandma. And I explained it to her. So I did this in my early to mid 20s. And then ever since that time frame, I felt like all the extra time that I've spent with them was a bonus, because I convinced my mind that they had actually died, right? So all the time that I spent with them after that, it felt like a bonus, and I wasn't attached to them, and I wasn't trying to force them to do things. I wasn't expecting them to do things a certain way. I wasn't trying to force or control them. There wasn't any arguments or frustration in our relationship after my mind had fully let go. So there was all this wonderful time after this that I got to spend with them. So this is how this can be really helpful for you. You can do this for people that you're really close to. You can do this if you have pets or animals and you're attached to them. You can do this for them. You can even do it for yourself. If you have a fear of death and you can't imagine dying, you can close your eyes and envision that you've actually died and play that out. And you might have to do that multiple times in order to get comfortable with your own death. Because again, death is going to come visit you. Every single one of us, it's going to come visit us. And we can wait for it to sneak up on us, or we can go visit it. It's up to us, right? And if you go visit death, it's going to be much more comfortable, because you can do it on your terms. You can do it when you're ready, right? If you have a big business meeting coming up tomorrow, this isn't something you'd like to do today, right? So you'd like to kind of plan this out in a situation where you've got a few days where you're not really doing anything very impactful, and now you're confronting death on your terms. This is very empowering, instead of allowing death to sneak up on you. Okay, so this is reflection on death. This will really help you to eliminate any kind of craving, desire, attachment in your relationships. Any questions on any of this stuff? It's like Jake has some questions. Yeah, that's good. That means you're thinking about it. Khalid's probably at home being proud of you, right? He's got questions.
So my question is I've seen the situation is I know somebody whose parent has died, and they haven't been able to let go, and they still haven't been able to let go. So now they have like all of their parents' stuff still, because they're still attached to this, and they've asked me for help, and I haven't known how to help them. How would I start to help them get rid of this attachment and start to unburden themselves, so that they've burdened with all this other stuff?
Sure. So breathing mindfulness meditation is really important to train the mind to let go. So getting that on board is really helpful. But then when someone dies, the Buddha teaches you to practice generosity on their behalf. So like if your parents die, he teaches you to go out and give out gifts on behalf of your parents. So you give out gifts to your aunts and uncles and maybe your parents' co-workers, the neighbors, things like this. And it's like a gift from your parents. Because whenever you're practicing generosity, it's training your mind to let go. So practicing some generosity will be really helpful in the name of their parents. That would be really helpful. This one?
Just reflecting on patience, it can be for me really frustrating to like know what like I need to be doing, and seeing the mind's wanting to do certain things, and sometimes not being able to like cutting it off and letting it go in the moment, and sometimes slipping and whatever that unwholesome action or speech coming through, that patience can be really like it can almost slip through where I can feel the mind like shaming myself or like belittling. Yeah. So like, is that just another practice of cutting that off and letting it go? Yeah. It's like that again comes back to that. And then something like loving kindness for myself, like,
that's a craving by itself, right? So this is what I call it. I call it you're discontent because you're discontent. Right? It's like you become discontent because, I don't know, just say your dog ate your homework, right? And now you're discontent because of that. But then you're discontent because you're discontent. Like, man, I should have gotten rid of that craving by now, right? So you need to be able to be patient with yourself and know that it's gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. The mind will crave perfection today. It wants to be perfect today. And there's a period of time where you intellectually know what you should be doing, but your mind just won't do it because it's got those pollutions in there. So you're going to need to get comfortable with the uncomfortable, that there is going to be times where you intellectually know what you should be doing, but you just don't do it. And you just need to get better and better, keep training your mind, stay dedicated to the practice, keep doubling down on your practice, keep doing the meditations, the generosity, and just keep working with it and being patient. Because impatience is because of craving. The mind's wanting something quick and fast, and now it's not patient to wait for whatever that thing is. So it wants to go. It's like really quick. So that's what the craving is going to do, is it's going to motivate the mind to be wanting things really fast, really quick, because it wants to get to those pleasant feelings. That's what the mind's chasing after. And it feels like if I can get these cravings fulfilled, I get those pleasant feelings. But you need to be willing to restrain the mind and gradually work towards things. And you're doing it out of wise decision making rather than trying to get to those pleasant feelings. So that's where the patience comes in. An enlightened being is going to be patient.
Right now I'm wondering how I can identify if I'm attached to somebody or if I'm just having love for them.
I'm sorry, I thought you were done.
Yeah, I think I have just one example. So like right now I'm having a lot of contact with a guy, and I think I'm attached because I want him to answer and respond to me, my messages and stuff. But for my mom, for example, I don't have that. So of course, if I'm calling her, I would like to, maybe she's giving me a call back, but I'm not sure if I have an attachment. But maybe you always have an attachment to like your parents at first. I'm not sure right now.
Usually children are attached to their parents when they're growing up, and you don't actually eliminate your attachment until you train your mind to do so. Or sometimes when people die, through the grieving process, the mind will eventually let go. But sometimes people can grieve for decades about an individual because the mind just never lets go. But if you train your mind actively with the Eightfold Path and the things that I'm teaching you, you can let go of your craving and you'll have very fulfilling relationships. The way that you know you're attached in a relationship is if there's discontentedness, that's a telltale sign. Like if you get frustrated when this guy doesn't write you, or you get agitated when your mom does one thing or another, you know you have attachment in those relationships. Or if you ask yourself this question, if your mom died, would you be sorrowful? Would you be sad? And if the answer is yes, which commonly it is, then you know you're attached because the mind has a craving for them to be permanent. Sometimes, again, we think that's the love, but that's not the actual love. That's the attachment. So by the time you get rid of an attachment, you can experience the death of this individual and you wouldn't grieve. So like if I got a phone call right now that my wife is dead, I wouldn't actually grieve. I wouldn't be upset. And it's not because I don't love her. It's just because I know that she's impermanent and she is going to die. It's just a matter of time. Even if I got a phone call that my son had died, I wouldn't be upset. I would just start making decisions in order to make sure that we take care of this in the best way possible, respectfully. And I would maintain my appreciation and gratitude for these beings that were in my life. So you can get to that, but it takes time. So if you ever see discontentedness in a relationship, you know that your mind is attached, or like you were describing how you wanted them to write you back. You might be checking your phone regularly to see if they've written you back in a message or if they've actually written you at all. That's the mind longing, yearning for contact with this person. And you would be able to get to the point where when they write you, great, wonderful, I'll write back to them and I'll have this great conversation. But when they don't write, that's okay too. And that's what you would ultimately like to get to. And that's the liberation. That's the freedom of the mind, where you're not bound up in just wanting and longing, yearning for something specific to happen in the relationship.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, so it's 3:00. So we've come to the end of today's class. So thank you guys for your questions. Thank you for your interest to learn. It's wonderful to share these teachings with you. As you gradually learn them and you practice them more and more, you'll be able to see significant results. None of these things is like you learn it, you snap your fingers, and you instantly go out in the world and you do it perfectly. That's not the way this works. Oftentimes people are learning these topics multiple times. As you gradually are learning it intellectually, you're reflecting on it, and then you're practicing it to integrate it into your life. So understand that this might be the first time you've kind of been exposed to this type of teachings, and then slowly but surely you can practice them and see the results for yourself. Tomorrow we're going to start out in the morning with loving kindness meditation in the same way that we typically do each morning. And then I'm going to share this topic with you of sharing the path to enlightenment, how to guide children along the path. And even though some of you might not have children or your children might be grown, there's things that are in this talk that is actually going to help you. Like if you would like to share the path with your life partner, or you'd like to share it with your mom or your dad or your brothers or your sisters, I'm going to really focus it on sharing the path with the children, because oftentimes that's one of the ideal times to help somebody in their journey, is that when a person's really young, their mind isn't very heavily polluted, and we can help people in that period of time. But there's also things that I'm going to teach you in here that's going to relate it to other relationships that you have too. So even if you don't have children or you're never planning to have children, you're going to learn how to help other people through sharing the path to enlightenment when they're interested in learning. So then that's a really long subject that'll take us the whole entire morning. And then in the afternoon, I'm going to teach you how to develop and maintain relationships, choosing wholesome friends and a life partner, because the choices that you make about who to involve in your life is going to make a difference in your life. You have certain choices to make about your friends and your life partner, and you need to be able to make those choices without judging other people, without looking down on them. So I'm going to teach you how to make wise choices about who to involve in your life without judging people and looking down on people. So this is what we're going to do tomorrow. And of course, in the afternoon, we're going to do some more meditation as well. So enjoy your evening, whatever you choose to do, and perhaps I'll see you guys tomorrow. Okay? Have a good evening. Sawadee Kap. Sawadee Kap.